Well, the Auburn Tigers may be losing a commit, but I think it's okay.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Join me as he does every single Monday. It is the Lindsey Crosby. You can find all of his stuff at thebarnauburn.com, as well as a bunch of other places. We'll talk about Auburn basketball's incredible win Saturday night over Houston, as well as Amaris Williams and some other guys that we want to see more of in the following weeks to end Auburn's regular season. But Auburn was off this week, and some commits were elsewhere, specifically a few guys in Oxford watching Ole Miss pull off a stunner against Georgia. And in that response, you've seen some crystal balls come in, as well as some RPMs, depending on if you're looking at 247 or on 3. But a lot of chatter about Auburn corner commit Dante Core being now predicted and projected to flip from Auburn to Ole Miss, Lindsey.
Yeah, he has a 6 on 247 from Tom Loy that came in just recently. And I get it, right? You got to go into their house and you got to watch them beat Georgia, which doesn't happen a lot outside of Alabama, right? It's an exciting thing. And I understand how that's emotional. That can sway somebody, but I still at the end of the day don't necessarily know if it's a great idea for anybody to willingly join a Lane Kiffin run program, simply just based on the history of how things go with Ole Miss usually.
Yeah, and I think context is important here. Like Dante Core, he's been a part of this class for a long time. He was May, and since then, more talented defensive backs have jumped in. And when you pull up Auburn's list of committed guys, like he is towards the bottom. Now, it's going to be really easy to say like, oh, okay, Auburn fans are okay losing Dante Core. And like, I do think this coaching staff has backup plans for this and maybe better plans, depending on if you look solely at rankings and stars, but we'll get into that in a second. But I like Dante Core and I like his game. And if he does flip from Auburn to Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is getting a really talented corner that projects well at the next level, assuming he puts on a little bit of weight and his feet get a little bit better. But I think his overall intangibles and his speed, like he's got a lot of things that you want in a college corner at the next level. And to me, like if you're Dante Core, you're like, well, there's a lot of corners and defensive backs, a ton of really talented defensive backs in Auburn's class. Like my path to playing time isn't obvious in this situation, where if you look at Ole Miss's situation, he's like, yeah, maybe my path to playing time is good. And then, we don't know what NIL looks like or, what the specific pitches are for Dante, but you could kind of read between the lines here and say, yes, this makes sense why Dante would want to flip from Auburn to Ole Miss.
Yeah. Your note on the strength of the class, there's 6 defensive backs listed. He is the 6th of 6. There are only 3 players below him in the rankings. Again, I'm looking at 247. One of those is a punter. So that kind of tells you where it is. But I have to be honest.
One Spencer Dowland?
No, it's Ty Buster, Jacoby Ward, both interior offensive linemen, and then John Allen McGuire.
Interesting.
At punter. And those are the 3 guys below him. But
all right.
I have to be honest, when Zach Blackerby says, I think he's a good college corner, I think we're legitimately losing something, I get a little bit worried because I do this more than you do, but you've got a great track record of defensive backs and understanding what these kids have to do to be successful at the next level. So it's a little bit frustrating to hear that you're higher on him than maybe the national ranking services are. That's a little bit concerning to me.
Well,
but
I don't want to change. I don't want to change our opinion on a guy just because, he's probably leaving at this point. Like, I don't think that's fair to the kid. I don't think that's fair as far as, us, having a platform and doing our best to make sure Auburn folks are informed. But like, if you look at it, Like, I'd rather have Blake Woodby. I'd rather have Devin Williams.
Mhm.
I'd rather have, I'm scrolling down here. I'd rather have Bryce Diaz. And who am I missing? Star. I'd rather have Star, even though there is chatter about like, what could he do moving forward. And the chatter that's kind of prompting some of this is it does seem like Auburn is ready for this move. I mean, a lot of Auburn fans are saying, oh, okay, they're making room for Naeem Offord, the number one player in the state. He's from Parker, Alabama, and Birmingham. He plays at Parker. Committed to Ohio State, one of the best corners in high school football, and rightfully so, coveted by every top program out there. And Auburn feels like they're in it for him. I don't think it's for this. I think if Offord wants to come, like, whatever, there's a spot for you. I don't think they're really counting positions for that. I think this says more to do with Shamar Arnaud, which, if that name sounds familiar, this is a guy that Auburn felt like they were good with, the Carrollton cornerback. And if you'll think back to when the Juju Lewis chatter was super, super loud, USC started pursuing Shamar late in that process, and then he committed to USC, and kind of on the outside looking in, it looked like they were pursuing him to kind of solidify Juju's commitment to USC. So now
he didn't.
More and more picks come in for Shamar Arnaud to flip to Auburn, which does seem likely at this point.
Yeah. Arnaud didn't get an offer from USC until June of 2020, like of this year. And so it really does feel like it's tied to other factors. And I mean, he is both in the state, in his state at his position, he is rated higher than Dante Core. Now, obviously these things are not perfect.
No,
he does have, it feels like, he has better physical trait. He's 6'2", 175. Core's listed, he's listed under 6 foot tall, 165. You mentioned he had to add weight. I mean, it feels like this is, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a move that you would hate if you're adding Shamar Arnaud. This is, I mean, it's, I think the big thing is, I imagine people who are looking for things to be negative about are going to be concerned when they hear that Auburn is potentially losing a commit. But I think the point is, it could potentially be for adding a better player to the class.
Yeah. And once again, like the big picture approach is this staff gets it. They understand what's happening. And to me, it's like the fact that, okay, there's chatter that Core is about to leave. Oh, well, there's also chatter that you're about to get somebody who's ranked higher to replace him. And you can kind of already see the dominoes starting to fall. And so, like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. If I had to pick between the two, I would take Shamar, but I think it's close, right? Like, I think both of these guys are going to be like, they both project to be solid at the next level. I'm not going to all of a sudden like start dissing Dante Core because there's a chance Auburn may lose him. I think Dante Core is going to be a good corner. I think Shamar has a chance to be a good corner. So, but that seems to be what's going to happen. And you can look at Dante Core's socials. He's all in on Ole Miss. You were looking at Shamar Arnaud's recent posts on X, and he's talking about his visit to Auburn. So all of this is lining up, Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, he's got multiple tweets out there about coming to Auburn and visiting Auburn. And at the end of the day, I think we have to remember that this is the 6th defensive back in the class, right? This is not something where this is your top recruit. This is going to severely damage the ranking of the class. This is still a very, very good class, a top 5 class, which I can't think of many other schools in the country who could have the record that Auburn has right now and have a top 5 class. And so,
there's not another one. There's not another one.
Everybody else in that list it's Ohio State, it's Georgia, it's LSU, it's Alabama. Those are the only teams above Auburn right now. And so, yeah, I mean, you need to know about it, but don't be concerned about it. And I think that's just me trying to head off what I worry are some people going to freak out about this.
Yeah. And I'm going to steal a sentence you just said to preview our next topic. Auburn fans, you need to know about it, but I don't think you need to be concerned about it. And that's Deuce Knight's visit to Ole Miss. this past weekend with Dante Core. So we talk about Auburn's quarterback commit in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Lindsay, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
I absolutely cannot. They have the most consistent, the highest quality lines. Their information, second to none. We use it all the time on my shows talking about MLB. No question.
Sure. Yeah, they're the best. They're the best. Auburn, a 24.5-point favorite this weekend against UL Monroe. Seems high. I'm not going to lie to you. That seems a little high.
Based on recent, if this was week 1 or week 2, I'd feel comfortable with 24.5. At this point in the season, I don't want to take 24 and I don't want to have to be sweating out a 34 to
24. Like this offense scoring 24 points at this point. It's just like that seems like a lot. That seems like a lot. So I don't
want to have to sweat out a blowout here. I don't love the idea of that.
Yeah, honestly. It just doesn't seem fun. That doesn't seem fun. But if it seems fun to you, head over to FanDuel.com. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's fun. And that's all over at FanDuel.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Lindsay, can you imagine buying Auburn swag anywhere other than our friends at Alumni? May I ask where you bought that hat? May I ask?
The swinging obby, the Auburn baseball with the rope hat. The rope hat. DMs the bat.
The rope hats are in right now, and your display of it right now explains why.
Every time I wear it on the show, I get tweets, I get DMs. People are like, where'd you get that hat? And I'm like, folks, alumnihall.com. Or if you want to go size it in person, they have 3 locations because they're in Auburn, they're in Opelika, and they're in Huntsville.
Wow. I don't even have to do the read. You did it for me. Go to alumnihall.com. Look, Christmas is right around the corner. Don't let it sneak up on you. Alumni Hall is the way to get it done for any Auburn fan in your life. So like Lindsay said, 3 physical locations, one in Auburn, one in Opelika, one in Huntsville, or alumnihall.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Auburn fans were in a panic, and I get it. When Deuce Knight visits Ole Miss for the Ole Miss Georgia game, one of the biggest games in the country, and then the fact that Ole Miss won in the fashion that they did, and there's a video of Deuce Knight storming the field afterwards. Like, it's not the best look. It's not the greatest feeling in the world. Him taking pictures with everybody and all that, and the Ole Miss swag. Like, it's not a great situation, but I'm not concerned yet, Lindsay. I mean, this is a guy that took a long time to flip from Notre Dame to Auburn because he wanted to be so sure. I do hate that he visits Auburn all the time and we can't win when he's there. And then he goes to Ole Miss and they have like their biggest win in decades, it seems like. Like, that stinks. I don't love the timing of that. I'm not going to lie to you, but I think when you look at all the things that were important to Deuce Knight, I think those are all still important. And I don't know if Ole Miss can offer the exact thing that Auburn is able to offer, but I do think we need to be aware of it. No question about it.
I think something that bears mentioning as well in this situation is that he's from Mississippi.
Yeah.
And so it is incredibly convenient to visit a school in state versus going somewhere else, right? It's not nothing. He does have to drive to get to Ole Miss, right? But he's an in-state kid. And so I understand you have a free weekend. Auburn's not playing. Let me go take advantage of the hospitality and go visit the in-state school. Now, if he doesn't visit for ULM or Texas A&M, am I going to be a little bit more concerned?
I would be.
Probably, yeah.
I would be.
But I do feel like you have, one, Lane Kiffin doesn't have a great reputation with high school quarterbacks because he's all about the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And then 2, to your point, he took so incredibly long to flip to Auburn because obviously he wanted to be sure. He wanted to know what he was doing. And it just feels like you don't do that to then turn around a couple weeks later and flip again. But the stakes are really big here for Hugh Freeze because he is, I mean, he is one of the top players in the class. He is the face of your class right now, and you've got to have a quarterback in your class.
Yeah, he just got that 5th star. So I mean, it just optically, we talk about this with recruiting all the time. Like, perception is reality, right. And when headlines are, Auburn's 5-star quarterback commits rushing the field for Ole Miss after they beat Georgia, like, this is not ideal. That's not ideal, but we'll see. If this becomes a normal thing, then all of a sudden, yes, you get concerned. But it was Auburn's bye week. Let's see what happens moving forward. All right, so Auburn did have a bye week. What do we expect to see after Auburn's bye week? In short, I want to see more Amaris Williams. That to me is the most important thing, because I just think the offense at this point it's just systematically broken, and I don't think they can just fix it in a week. Gosh, I hope I'm wrong. I feel like if that's the case, it would have been fixed by now. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too critical, but to me, like the most fixable thing about this is, okay, let's let the younger guys get more snaps. And Amaris Williams is really the only other guy outside of Perry Thompson where I think it makes sense to give them snaps while still being able to put the team in the best situation to win. And so I want to see Amaris get more than 6 snaps on Saturday.
And the frustrating thing is he was trending towards more. He had double-digit snaps against both Missouri and Kentucky on the road, and then he barely gets in the game at Vanderbilt. And I know PFF grades are not gospel, but when he was in the game against Vanderbilt, that was his second best game of the year, only behind Alabama A&M. He graded out pretty decently too.
Well, that was the talk afterwards. It was like, man, Amaris Williams played a ton against Vandy. It was like, he didn't. But every snap he played, he seemed to be like around the football. So it just felt like more than it was, which I think is like the best compliment you can have for a defensive end is like, oh, you don't play that much, but man, when you're in, like, you're around the football. Like, what else do you want in a player? So we talked a ton about when he flipped from, I don't know if he flipped from Florida to Auburn, if he decommitted and then committed to Auburn. I forget the exact timeline on that. Doesn't matter. But when we were talking about him as a prospect, as a recruit, we talked about his motor. Mm-hmm. And like, you could check off all those boxes because that's certainly, he certainly fits that mold, which is exactly what you want. Lindsay, is there a guy who's not playing a ton that maybe you want to see be more established in the game plan after the bye week?
I hate to jump back over to offense, but we got to figure out Micah Riley and getting him involved more. He just, he's played in 6 games, not a ton of snaps though. He's had a grand total of 1 target in 6 games. And it feels like, and I know we talked about this a little bit last week, it feels like if you're going to have significant turnover in that room with Rivaldo Fairweather, with Lou Deal, all these guys, that you need to let him play a little bit more, and it's just not happening. And it makes me wonder what is the future here for Micah Riley. Is he going to be part of the game plan next year, or are they going to recruit over him or try to bring in a transfer or somebody else?
Yeah. And like we talked a ton about Rico Walker, the Maryland tight end transfer.
Same thing.
Is he going to have a larger role? If not, like, why isn't he playing more? So yeah, the tight end situation is super interesting. You got to think that's going to be on their wish list in the transfer portal. Regardless of if Micah stays and everybody stays, like they still need those bodies unless they're just going to play multiple freshmen, which we like Hollis Davidson. We like Ryan G, but we just, you need experienced guys.
That's such a hard position to acclimate as a freshman in the SEC out of high school. Yeah. Like if nothing else, just physically holding up because you're attached to the line a lot of times. You're taking on juniors and seniors who have been in the SEC weight program for 3 years. Like, come on.
Yeah. And you've got to be a freakish athlete to be effective in the receiving game in this offense already, let alone, hold your own at the point of attack and on the line of scrimmage. That's tough. That's a lot to ask for a freshman.
Can I give you one more?
Yeah, sure.
That I just feel like we haven't seen a lot of, and he's not a freshman or anything. Zykevius Walker feels like he's been really good in the games he's played in outside of Arkansas, maybe, but I just don't feel like he's getting a lot of snaps. I think he only has one game that he broke 20.
I think we've said that every year. about Zacchaeus Walker. And every time the portal opens, we're like, is Zacchaeus Walker going to enter? Because, like, I don't think anybody would blame him. And he's one of those guys. He's like the Brandon Frazier of the defensive line room, where it's just maybe he just likes Auburn. Maybe he just likes being here and likes being a piece and a role player in this scheme. I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is. But, yeah, I mean, he's looked okay this year. Certainly.
He just doesn't play.
Yeah, he doesn't play.
Yeah, kind of confusing.
Yeah.
And then
that's a good one.
I've talked about Robert Woodyard to death at this point about you got to figure out the linebacker position next year. And I feel like he should be getting more run than he gets. I think he has under 100 snaps. He's played 7 games, but under 100 snaps at this point. And it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's on transfer watch at this point, right? And I don't think anybody would blame him, especially with the way Riddick is played. And they're going to have to get linebackers through the portal anyway.
Yeah.
And you've got guys coming in that are young, and then you've got, DJ Barber. And we'll see how they use Joe Phillips and all that. So I don't know. His path to playing time in the future of this program, it's interesting. It's certainly interesting. And that's the guy we heard good things about in the spring. Yeah. And fall camp too. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Robert Woodyard for sure. Auburn basketball, incredible, borderline historic performance on Saturday. The number 1 team in the country, according to Ken Pom. Incredible stuff. Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, whether it's for football, basketball, baseball. You know how hard it is to get Auburn basketball tickets right now, Lindsay?
Bruce told us when he got here, go ahead and get on the season ticket list, because if you don't, you're going to be waiting for a while. And then and most people have to wait unless they have Game Time.
Unless you have Game Time, you can just buy the ticket for whatever game you want. It's that easy. It's like 3 clicks on your phone. You can toggle the all-in pricing feature so you know exactly what you're going to pay. You're not going to get blasted by fees at the last second.
You can see a picture of your seat.
Yeah.
You know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, which, to be fair, like with Auburn, with Neville Arena, like not really a bad seat in the house, but still, it's good to have.
Oh, I've been to baseball games with obstructed views, and Game Time is great for that, because there's a pillar in front of you, buddy.
Yeah,
that seat's available for a reason.
It's like, why is this seat so cheap? Now you can know why. You can know why. So head over to the Game Time app, download it, and when you make your account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Yeah, it is. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. If you're mad that it took us this long to talk about basketball, that's totally okay. Go check out the show right before this on your audio feed, or the show right before this on the YouTube channel, however you're consuming the show. Daryl and I went live right afterwards. I think it's like 35 minutes or so of just, raw reaction to the game. Super, super fun. Super, super fun. The Auburn Tigers take down the Houston Cougars 74-69. According to Ken Pom, it was the number 1 team versus the number 2 team, and then Auburn beat them. Now Auburn is the number 1 team in all of college basketball, which is very, very fun. But all the storylines going into this, Lindsay, was Houston's the number 1 defense in college basketball. And how are these guys gonna, travel? I mean, it's essentially a road game. I know it goes in the ledger. It's a neutral site game, but that's a joke. We all know it.
Yeah.
But you look at like what you needed out of your all-stars, and Janai Broome was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like, this was the coming out party for Tahad Pettiford. I mean, this could be, depending on what happens the rest of the season with Tahad, if he goes on to be an NBA player like he's certainly capable of doing, like in Auburn lore, this could be a game that's discussed for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, his debut against Vermont in a blowout was not good. He didn't score any points. He turns around and puts up 21 against Houston. Again, incredible. The best defense in college basketball. And this is something, Auburn had a dreadful first half. They had a football-esque first half. They were losing. They turned it over a quarter of the time, scored on less than half their trips down the floor. And then they turned around in the second half. Bruce gave the play calling over to Mike Burgomaster. And from that point on, 57% from the floor in the second half. only 4 turnovers, and it was dominance. And
how nice is it to have an Auburn head coach where it's like, man, it's halftime, things aren't going that well. I'm going to like trust my staff to do stuff.
I'm going to turn over the play calling to give it to somebody else. And it's like, let me do the things that are working, and then let's just keep doing them.
And then give them credit for it. Like, props to you.
Yeah, but like
kind of refreshing.
It was something like Broome and Pettiford were the focus in the second half.
Yeah.
And it was working. So Auburn just kept going back to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's times when I miss Gus Malzahn because that was the thing. And the run game was working in the second half. When the run game was working in the second half, he would just keep giving it to that back over and over again. And this was a Gus Malzahn-esque performance from the perspective of they just kept feeding Broome, kept feeding Pettiford, and it kept working.
I tell you what,
dude, what was it, a 9-point deficit to a 5-point lead?
Just to go back to football to like carry on to your point, like watching South Carolina run the ball on Vandy was very frustrating.
Like, we could have done this. We could have done this.
Oh my goodness. Janai Broome, Janai Broome was just dominant in this game. Yeah. If he clearly wants to shoot threes, which is fine. He made one against Vermont. He may have made 2 against Vermont. I don't remember. I know he made 1, but 10 of 15 from the floor. He was 0 for 4 from 3. So like all of his stuff around the basket means he was 10 for 11. But that's just disgusting.
Everybody not named Pettiford was bad from 3. Auburn went 2 for 15 from guys that were not Pettiford from 3.
Wow, you're right. I didn't think about it from that angle.
Like Broome didn't hit 1, Kelly didn't hit 1, Jones didn't hit 1. And like it was something where but Broome was just so good by the basket. His numbers came out really well despite doing that. Yeah. And then there was things. Here's the thing. There was stuff you could have cleaned up, right? You had some 1-and-1s and you missed the front end of it, which
that's right.
Obviously
the 2 missed dunks as well.
Yeah. Like you had things you could have cleaned up and you still took down the best defense in college basketball. It should make you feel really good. What you did this week, the first 2 games of the season.
Huge.
They were like, yeah, Vermont's kind of like Yale. You'll win by 10 or something. You won by 51?
Yeah.
And then you go into a hostile environment to play Houston in their city. Mm-hmm. Screw the neutral field, the neutral court stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And you just dominated them in the second half in a way I have not seen Kelvin Sampson get dominated in years.
Yeah. Yeah. Houston message boards are saying that he's past his prime, which is I don't agree with, but it is funny. It is funny. So, whatever.
Auburn basketball was so good that Houston fans want to fire Kelvin Sampson. What does that tell you about how good Auburn did?
Oh, yes. Yes. I love it. All right. Hey, Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Auburn baseball stuff, the Bar in Auburn. I was just at the Orange and Blue World Series. Got some notes on there. Ooh. And then, if you're an Atlanta Braves fan, BravesToday.com. It's the Braves Today podcast and the newsletter. Check it out.
Yeah, be sure to check that out for sure. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. You can check out my stuff at thebarnauburn.com as well. Until next time, this has been Locked On Auburn.